Hi, guys. Thank you guys for joining us today. Today we have a special guest, the first guest on the channel, and I'm super hyped about it. We have James from Engaging the Phenomenon, who I consider a friend and a friend of the channel. He's included me in a lot of his videos, so I'm happy to say that he is the first guest, and I can't wait to get into a discussion with him tonight. So, how you doing, James? How's everything?
I'm doing awesome, man. Thanks for having me on. I love your channel, by the way. You have really like a cinematic touch that's like incredible. I think this community needs it.
Thank you, man. That means a lot because I really do try my best with the, I guess you'd say, the little resources I have, but I am trying to give at least quality. I know that I'm not any Richard Dolan, but I can at least try to give you guys something cinematic to look at. And I love your channel as well. Honestly, I've been following you for a long time, and it was really cool when you reached out to me. You were probably one of the first people, content creator wise, to shoot me a message and ask to be part of the channel. So it really does mean a lot, and I think it's a good example, and it sets a good example for the community. I think we should all be doing that. So yeah, tonight the idea with this is to have just a chilled out, mellow discussion, talk about the phenomenon, learn a little bit about each other. And I asked you the other day if you would mind if we open some beers on the show. And I thought, mellow session, why not crack open some beers? And you told me that you don't drink because you meditate. So it's like I found that really interesting. And I want to just learn more, seeing as you're the person I think of when I think of CE5. I don't even think of Greer. I think of you because I've learned so much from your content. And I just want to know what other things you do in your life sort of to stay in balance and to help your meditation practice while I open this beer and ruin my my meditation practice.
Not, actually, and here I actually got my drink is a C4. It's just an energy drink. If I have any vice, it's a stimulant.
You are super healthy too.
Uh,
Like you work out and stuff. You're super healthy,
yeah,
which is good.
yeah. I love to work out. But as far as like meditation practice, so actually, I don't ingest intoxicants, and that's just for the idea of purity of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Which you can actually extrapolate that. And that goes into like things that you're watching and listening to, and just being aware of how those kind of things, things that you eat, all that kind of thing affect your consciousness and your awareness and then the purity of your mind. That's not to say that you can't have a serious practice. If you have a beer every once in a while, or even once a week, or twice a week, it's not going to really inhibit your practice too much. But it is abstaining from any intoxicants is a practice in meditation. But for me, I've been doing it for so many years. It's lifestyle.
Yeah.
So a big thing in meditation practice is removing obstacles. And that's removing obstacles from you in clearing your awareness and trying to, maintain elevated states. So that also would go down to in yoga what they call the 8 limbs of yoga, or in Buddhism what they call the eightfold path. So those are just things to purify your mind and your consciousness, and people take it to different extents. You can absolutely benefit from meditation by just doing 20 minutes of meditation every day and not including any other thing in your life. You'll still get the benefit from it. But as you include it, other aspects in your life as a practice and discipline, you're going to obviously garner greater results.
Totally. And I see exactly where you're coming from with that because look, I grew up in California and in Los Angeles and Venice Beach. And as many of you know, Venice Beach is a beach town for those of you that don't know. And there's a big, the weed is legal now. There's a big culture of like, I don't know if it just affected me, but when I was in college, I drank a lot. When I was a teenager, I was a surfer. So of course there was a little cannabis going on there. And I totally, I totally understand what you mean. Now that I'm older, I'm more like relaxed in life, but there are times where I will just for no reason not have any drinks or not take part in anything out of the ordinary that affects my body. And I totally feel clear-headed and clear-minded. And it's really weird. I've had some pretty interesting experiences when I am that way. It's almost like I'm more awake, I'm more aware. And lots of people don't think about that, like how drinking something on Tuesday or Thursday can affect you all the way till, the next week or until everything gets out of your body. I don't know how long that takes, but I totally understand that take, and I respect it. I really do. So I said earlier that I think of you when I think of CE5, and I really am interested in the topic, and I want to learn more about it. So I've been waiting to like sit down and talk to you. So this is awesome. If first I want to know, like, how long have you been practicing CE5? Do you call it C5, or do you think it's something like there's a broader term for it, and C5 is just something that Greer kind of classified, if that makes sense?
Sure. I've been practicing CE5 specifically since around 2008, 2009, towards the end of 2008, really. And I call it C5 simply just because it's a simple term to use. I like the terminology. I like that Greer did that. Although in the same token, he kind of wrecked the term more or less, because any affiliation with him is almost tainted these days, unfortunately. You have like a spectrum of people who almost hero worship Dr. Greer, and people who just hate everything about him. And that's unfortunate, because I think the truth is somewhere in between that, and where, obviously Dr. Greer has done incredible work. We probably wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for the work he did. But at the same time, I mean, it's CE5's worst enemy is Dr. Greer, even though he elevated it to where it is now. At the same time, he really did. CE5, the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind film, has been seen by millions of people.
Yeah.
Just being able to plant that seed to millions and millions of people, just the awareness of it, that it's a possibility. Most people don't even consider that idea. So I don't mind calling it CE5 in a larger context. It's really just contact.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I missed any part of your question there.
No, you didn't. That was a good answer. But I'll say something. I was, I really believed in Stephen Greer and Dr. Greer for many years. I've been looking into this topic for a long time. Some people don't think that. Some people think maybe I started looking into this back in 2017, but that's not the case at all. I remember in, what was it, September, like during 9/11 was when those briefings were happening, or the citizens, what was it called? The citizens hearings, right? Do you know what I'm talking about? Where he got all those people.
The first one was the Disclosure Project.
Yeah. The Disclosure Project.
The Disclosure Project in May 2001.
Exactly. But then I think in like right as 9/11 happened, they were like on the news talking about it when he had different people bringing it up, or it was like right around that time. I might be wrong because this is a long time ago. I'm like basing it on memory, but I really did look up to him growing up, and thought he did do a lot. And I still do think he did do a lot for the discussion. And you can't take that away from him, which is why I never really dig into him, whenever I talk about him, because it's weird. Yeah. It's almost like somebody you looked up to is now like kind of like questioning what's going on. So I get both sides of the coin when it comes to him, especially like right now where we are today and what's happening right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if you feel that way too. Like there was a moment where I was just trying to be really on the fence, you know? I was like, okay, let's just try to always be biased when it comes to it and respect whatever, you know. TTSA had their narrative, Greer had this other narrative that was going on, and I was just in the middle kind of going like, well, we don't really fully understand what's happening yet, so let's just let it play out, and everyone, you know, think for yourself always. That's what I always try to live by. But I don't know. So I know what you mean when you say that he has done a lot. You know, he's done things for the community. I don't. If anyone disagrees with that, they need to just look back into history and realize like he's been here for a long time. That's not saying that what the message that's being portrayed at the moment that I agree with that message. I do not. But I don't know. At the end of the day, like you said, C5 people knowing that it's a possibility is beneficial. And I've always looked into the ancient astronaut hypothesis, and I find that it aligns very well with kind of C5 in the sense of I'm one of those people that thinks like, well, if there ever were gods, you know, why couldn't they be aliens? That would make a little more sense to me than like mythical beasts. But what is a mythical beast but an alien at the end of the day? And so using your consciousness and meditation and all this kind of stuff just seems to resonate throughout human history. And it seems to be very real. I mean, if we're going to talk about the phenomenon, we might as well take into consideration that that is an aspect of humanity that just to this day continues to be practiced around the world. So yeah, here's another question. Best C5 experience. I want to know about that. What's your best experience? Like the most mind-blowing experience you had?
So
if you're willing to tell it.
yeah, sure. And I want to differentiate and say I had experiences that were I'd say pretty insane that were not CE5s. I guess you could just call them close encounters, and that's ultimately what led me to CE5. But as far as somebody going out, you know, doing the kind of CE5 preparation meditation with the going out with the intention to have a contact experience or a close encounter with UFO intelligence, that was actually in June of 2011. So that's almost 10 years ago, in a few months. And that was, I was with some family members, actually. Well, two of them were in my house that had no idea what was going on. And the other one was with me, and it was going to be their first CE5 ever. So I said, listen, don't expect anything. And, you know, this is still somewhat earlier in my own like CE5 career as it is too. So, you know, I had success before, but I couldn't expect what had happened. So anyways, I said, listen, don't expect too much. Just don't stress yourself out. Let's just kind of do it. And, you know, worst case scenario, it's good practice. And so they were like, yeah, okay. And so we went in a room to do the CE5 meditation, and my other family members are outside in the living room watching a movie. So they have the lights off and everything. And we do the meditation and we finish. And this person, you know, my family member, I don't want to single them out, but they say to me, oh yeah, I got this message saying, you know, look out for the colors. And, you know, I'm open-minded, but I was still, you know, there's a thought in my mind of like, maybe maybe that thought came to them from themselves. I don't know. Yeah. You know, I kind of was just observing what they said. So I'm like, all right, you know, whatever, look for the colors. So we step out the door, and my other two family members are there. They're like, somebody's taking pictures from outside. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like somebody's using a camera with flash. So there's light coming in the house, lighting up the living room from outside. And I was like, oh, you know, I instantly knew that there must have been something going on. Yeah. You know? So I go outside, and I on my way outside, I grabbed my laser, which I don't recommend people use. But I was earlier in that career, so as soon as I go outside, I see two, white orbs, and they're like this. They're kind of like they're going like this towards each other, and I shine my laser in between them, and one flashed and then the other flashed, like they flashed to each other. So I'm like, holy crap. And as soon as that happened, when my other family member who did the meditation was with me, as soon as that happened, the sky just lit up. And just about every direction you looked, there were all different kind of phenomena going
Wow.
on. I had like this electrical surge throughout my body, like a feeling of euphoria or bliss, like almost like a kundalini awakening experience, something like a kundalini experience. And I was just my mind was blown instantly because I realized this whole event was taking place already. And I ran inside. I got my other family members and said, come out. They're kind of like unsuspecting witnesses. They're not supposed to be involved in this. They just happen to be there. And I brought them out. And everywhere you looked in the sky for a half an hour, there was just like insane activity. Like I looked over in this direction over there, and there were literally purple orbs in the sky, and not too far off, like a green one. And then I looked in another direction, there's a red, and there's what people call flash bulbs, so bursts of light coming out of nowhere, all around the sky. And there's streakers, alleged, would look like a shooting star almost, but like swerving, like making S patterns in the sky and everything. It was outrageous because I'm thinking, for all this activity to be occurring, it was there. The intelligence was clearly trying to demonstrate something. I jokingly called it like an intergalactic initiation.
Yeah.
But they were definitely putting on a demonstration and trying to impress. I mean, and I don't have the answers, but if I were to contemplate, there's a being that represents every light or phenomena that occurred, that would be like hundreds of different intelligences, which I kind of, looking back now, I kind of doubt that. So I don't know. I can't say, how the phenomenon was able to do this, but it did. And all the witnesses there saw this. And, I kind of want to kick myself now, but the only reason this whole ordeal stopped is because I got to go get my friend Dave, because he was supposed to meet us later that night for CE5. This was just like a primer meditation. This was not even supposed to be like a CE5 event until I went and picked up my friend. And that's how I know it was a half an hour, because he finished work at like 10 o'clock. So I was going to go pick him up a little early, because I told him, like, you're not going to believe this. This is just insane. Because he's like the main guy I was doing CE5 with back then.
Yeah.
And there was stuff down right to the end, like orbs in my yard, like 6 feet, 5 feet away from me, in like a structure almost. It looked like there were like 3 and then 4, and it looked like they were in like almost like a pyramid structure almost. That I was freaking out at that point, basically.
Yeah, I could imagine,
because I was not expecting that. And I had other close encounters, but this was just something that was completely different. And I don't often tell this story, just because, I don't want to get people's expectations up. Like, this is what's going to happen when you do CE5. For one. Number two, it's kind of like I'm putting myself out there.
Yeah.
I'm putting my credibility on the line. Not many people are going to, understand or be able to relate to something like this. And therefore they're just going to kind of dismiss it or assume I'm exaggerating. And I can tell you, I'm trying to tell this as modestly as I can. Because this, again, it was just incredible and actually somewhat overwhelming in a sense. So that, as far as like CE5, was probably the craziest.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was, and I did not expect anything like that. I never,
I don't think anybody would ever expect anything like that. I'm telling you, like that.
Yeah.
So you were saying like you saw some orbs like 6 feet off the ground in the backyard.
6 feet away from me. Some of them were
6
lower
feet.
than 6 feet
Oh
off the
wow,
ground.
dude.
Yeah.
I I always
Like I could have
wonder.
went up and touched it
Yeah,
probably.
probably not a good idea.
But I didn't, I honestly, and I was just in the whole time. I don't want to say shock,
Yeah.
but
No, how are you not supposed to be in
I
shock?
was just totally immersed in this experience that was going on. Like
I get it.
I was in like a different reality.
Yeah,
It was amazing.
I get it. And people have this thing. I always think about it because I've had some weird experiences in my life. And I think back on those moments where I saw something that I couldn't explain. And your brain kind of, it's almost like you just said, like you're immersed in this other, like this idea of behind the veil, like peeking behind the veil.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like it's like, I get it. Cause like, if you look behind the veil and you see something surprising, it's almost like when you see something come out of the darkness, like a person come out of the darkness, you have to kind of like piece it together and see what's happening.
Yeah.
Like you have to process it. So I can't even imagine like I've tried to a million times because I'm like, dude, what if you finally have a close encounter that's way crazier than you could ever picture or that you ever would want? How are you going to react to it? And I think back on those weird experiences that I've had growing up, and I think like, well, I know what's going to happen. My brain is going to like glitch for a minute until it figures out what's going on. I'm going to enter into like some kind of like a weird euphoric feeling, or sort of like, I don't know if it's euphoric, but it's almost like confusion, because it's like, does that make sense? Like confusion in the sense of not something negative, but you're just kind of like,
yeah, like dumbfounded.
exactly. That's the better word to use, dumbfounded.
You know,
But
just like
what did
you're
the
trying to take it in.
exactly, you're trying to take it in, but it's happening too quick. And the thing is when it happens in real, like when it's happening to you in real life, I don't know if your brain is even just as dumbfounded. Like the machine that needs to process what's happening is like, wait, hold on, what's happening? Slow down. Because I'm just imagining too, what did your family think? Did they see it all? The people that were inside?
They saw all of it, and I don't want to single them out and say
No,
this
yeah.
was my, this such and such,
Yeah.
but I mean, they were there for the whole thing, and they were watching this, and I'm like, you're seeing this, right? And they're like, yeah, and they're dumbfounded too, and I can tell you that it changed them for sure. I mean, they knew that I had, one of them was, or no, two of them had been present for another high level contact event I had a few years prior.
Wait, I want to hear about that too. So don't let me know about the other high level contact experience.
That's a whole nother story. Actually that there's a whole, cause they're all connected in some way.
Yeah, they have to be.
And, I'm not just saying like that, like, oh, it's all connected, guys, but there was a series of contact that I had. And the way I saw it was absolutely all connected, and each event led to another. But they saw the whole thing, and this family member, was even said to me after I left and I went to go get my friend Dave, oh my God, they're following you, da 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 da. And I'm just to finish that story off, is that when I got my friend Dave, who actually he admins the CE5 initiative group with me.
Cool.
And he's like the main guy I started all my CE5 stuff with. He was like my main CE5 partner going back to, back then. And when I brought him back, the show was over, and I was like, damn it. Like what would have happened if I never left? That always kills me thinking about that.
I could imagine, man. I could imagine. I mean, there's so many things you probably think about when you think about that. Like you said,
Yeah.
you almost
Oh man.
touched it. Like you felt like you should have touched it.
Yeah.
And you guys didn't have cameras, right? You didn't have anything like that. I wouldn't
I
imagine that you
wasn't
guys were waiting like with a camera or anything.
I wasn't no, I wasn't even expecting much to happen,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
I didn't want to go back in my house.
Yeah.
Um and the only reason I left to get Dave is because, we had a lot of CE5 together, but nothing like this. This was just a whole nother, a whole nother level of a contact experience.
Yeah. Totally, man. Thank you for sharing that. And I know exactly what you're saying about putting, your credibility on the line and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, that's your experience. And what that's going to do for you is give you the knowledge to understand kind of what's going on. Everyone else on this journey, on this search, I feel like they all have to have their own experience. If not, they're going to always question what's going on. How could this be real? How could that story be real? Like I hear you tell your story and I really appreciate it. And I also think like, wow, like, see, that's why I was trying to tell you, like, I need C5 tips. Like I want to have an experience. It doesn't have to be that, that wild, but, I have messed around a little bit with C5. Like I made one video a long time ago trying,
I saw the video.
yeah, I think you did. I think that's when we started
That's a
talking
cool video, man.
a long time ago. I think you might've messaged me like a long time ago and we didn't talk until I got on Twitter. Like, cause I think I shared it in a C5 group somewhere and I
Yeah.
have to double check that, but, yeah, I did that one. I did two. So I did one where nothing happened at all. Right. I did
Yeah.
another one where I saw a strange sort of blue, like, what did you call it? Like a streak? What was it? You had a name for it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Streaker.
a streaker, like a blue streaker going up instead of shooting
Yeah.
across the
Yeah.
sky
Yeah.
like a shooting star. It was going up and it's in the middle of the city. So it didn't make sense. And the weird thing is okay, that was cool. Did the video. I said, hey guys, this weird thing happened. I couldn't film it because it just happened in a second. And a few years later, now that I live in this other location and I have a balcony where I can see the whole city, like from over there, I can just see the whole city. And
Yeah.
there's been moments where you get kind of tired looking into the phenomenon. I'll be honest with you. You get tired. Like I definitely have hit some brick walls where I'm just like, God.
You can get a little burnt out.
Yeah, you're like, how far can I go? What can I really do? Like, what can I really find? And I went out to the balcony and I looked up to the sky and I was like, in my mind, I was like, just show me something. I know you're there. Show me something. I spent hours looking into this. Show me something. And again, I saw that same blue streaker thing, the blue streak, shoot up again in the same direction, different location, and the whole nother part of the city, directly in my view. And the crazy thing is it's not even that high. Both times it happened, it wasn't that high. It's high enough to be not like, I don't know, an electrical malfunction from an electrical post or something down there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I saw it and I was like, that was super strange that happened right as I thought that. And I looked out.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times that's how contact happens.
And
And
that doesn't that blow your mind? Like, it makes me think like,
yeah,
what does that even mean? Like,
it's still, even after all my experiences, and I've done hundreds, if not more, of C5s. I mean, you're talking for over 12 years. I used to go out sometimes like 4 times a week. And my meditation regimen back then was like at least 3 hours a day of regular meditation.
yeah.
And then like CE5, it's like CE5 work and field work and stuff. And still to this day, just with some of those simple things, it still blows my mind. Like, wow, we have that, this potential,
Yeah.
to be able to reach out and to interact with other sentient intelligences. And I think that's the power in CE5 is part of that. It's not just, oh, wow, cool, I can do this. It's like, it just shows you that the universe is not, as, how we've been taught it is.
Yeah.
Reality is not how we've been taught it is. It's something much grander, much greater, than we can even imagine, really.
Yeah. And it's definitely a beautiful way to live life, to have that hope and that understanding.
Yeah.
It's definitely positive. That's why I don't really hate on CE5. You know what I mean? Some people, because of the association to Greer and all that kind of stuff, they will just completely shun it. And I don't at all, because I think that if you look into the phenomenon and you look at just even close encounters, physical close encounters, and I've said this, I don't know if there's a link here, but this is just something I've thought. Um, you know how extraterrestrials, or the grays, or ultra dimensionals, or
Yeah.
whatever they are, right? they they communicate telepathically with the abductee, or with the person they're having the close encounter with. And right there, I feel like there has to be some kind of connection, because there are like supposedly telepathic humans. You have the psychic spies and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know if, an alien being would have the same kind of brain in his head as we do, or the same connection with consciousness. I guess it does, because you're going to probably explain it to me really well, because you have an understanding. My brother is also somebody that's very into consciousness and stuff, and he always tells me it's because it all stems from the same thing. Consciousness is like one thing. I mean, like, we're all connected at the end of the day. But it just makes me think, like, when I think about prayer, and I also, this C5 actually took me down some crazy rabbit holes, because when I think about prayer, I'll think, well, this is basically like meditation, and it's basically like C5, right? So if you think about a time, I don't know, 100 years ago or something, when people were meditating and praying honestly, they truly believed in what they were doing. They didn't have the internet, and people pray, even though people tell them, like, oh, the Bible is just fairy tales, or, that religious book is just fairy tales to teach you a lesson. It's not actually what happened. There's no reality in that. It's just like a story. But back in the day, they used to pray with that story as a reality. So when they were trying to contact something, they truly believed that they could do it. So they were totally open to it. So was it possible, or is it possible, that because they were less, I guess, tainted by this new era, this new world that we live in, this technological world, even though I think that idea of the Bible and religious text being fables has existed for a while, but maybe they were contacting something. Maybe they were interacting with the phenomenon. And that's where those stories stem from. And that's why religion has really echoed and stayed on this planet for so long. I don't know. It's literally C5 took me down that road. I want you to know that. I don't know how,
Yeah.
but it ended up taking me down that road. And I would go into, I don't know, now anytime I go into a church and I see an angel flying through the sky, or, a painting of an angel floating down with some lights shining from behind it and coming out of the clouds, I think, like, well, maybe back in the day they saw an orb come down, and maybe they had a close encounter, and what the phenomenon presented itself as maybe the lady, or that kind of situation, and they wrote it down, and it's an angel. And that's kind of an explanation to all those fables, supposedly, and all those stories. They're just kind of close encounters or interactions with the phenomenon. But I would love to hear a little more about those close encounters that you had without doing C5. That'd be interesting too, if you're willing to talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back a long time, actually, but just even the recent one starting, oh man, I'm trying to figure out what year, maybe 2007 is when it started. 2000, yeah, maybe it was around 2007. I think probably the summer of 2007, and there was this whole about 8-month period where all a series of events occurred. different contact experiences, and one included something like a near-death experience actually in this car accident I was in, and that's where the the other one I was referring to happened, because I had this insane near-death experience. It wasn't actually a near-death experience. At the time, it was occurring. I thought I was dead, but it happened, and I actually came out unfazed. But it was a really pretty bad car wreck, and I had, I guess, what you can call a trauma-induced out-of-body experience. So a trauma-induced OBE. And I had that's a whole other experience that's really personal. But during that, I saw this kind of like a light entity, a light being, and I was face to face with it, and it had like arms and a head, and the head was a little elongated. It looked different, and it was like made of pure light, like a 5D being or something. I don't know what people would want to call it in pop culture, but it could, if I didn't know better, I could say it's like an angel or something, right?
Yeah.
Not human and not even alien looking.
Yeah.
Just, a being of light. And I was face to face with it. And somewhere in my awareness, it seemed like I was thinking like this being reflects me somehow. I'm somehow connected to this being. And there was this whole thing with time, perceiving time, the past, present, and future at the same time. And anyway, and then I came, I was above the whole scene, and I was out of my body, but it was pure bliss.
Yeah.
No resentments, no fear. I was just kind of like this. So this is it. But I was so cool with it, But anyway, so we come to the next day, and I'm just in my room, grateful to be alive.
Yeah.
And I'm just, I'm cleaning my room. Like, oh man, I'm just like, I'm here, and out of nowhere, and this has to be like maybe 8 or 9 at night in the summer of 2007. And out of nowhere, I got what I call like a telepathic lock on.
Yeah.
So in my voice, like clear, and it didn't sound like my voice, and it was loud. Like I couldn't escape it if I wanted to. There's no question of like, did I hear that? But I heard a voice in my head say, "Come outside." But as soon as I heard the voice, like instantaneously, I knew what was going on. I knew that it was these beings, and that I was going to go outside and there's going to be a craft. I don't know how I can explain that I knew that, but I instantaneously knew it. And I was like super excited. So I ran out of the house, and I hear like a low humming.
Oh.
And this is the same thing as before, like a Kundalini effect. My whole body is like vibrating with electricity. And I'm just, again, there's like a euphoria or bliss. And I'm, at the same time, I'm super excited. I'm kind of freaking out. And I hear this really low hum, like, and I look up, and there's just trees where I was, because that's where I was in like where I was living. And so I ran into my driveway, and I can still hear it. And as soon as I look up, I saw almost like it looked like a hexagon almost. It was rounded, but it had flat edges like this.
Yeah.
So almost like it wasn't a pentagon. It was more like a hexagon. Like it had like six sides or so. And it was like a gunmetal black, and it had like lights in a perfect square like this, and just like these white lights like that. And then I'm staring at it, and it just literally vanished. It just completely like disappeared. And then I'm looking ahead of me, and there was like a lake ahead of me where I was living, and like 1,000 feet or 1,200 feet ahead of me, it rematerialized, and now it had lights going all around it like this.
Yeah.
And again, I'm freaking out. I'm like, holy, shit, this is actually happening. And literally at the time, I'm like, am I going crazy? Like, did I hit my head in the car accident? And I'm just like, hallucinating this.
Yeah.
So I ran inside. I got two of my family members, and I ran in the house. I'm like, they're here, and they're like, what are you talking about? They're here. I'm like, just come outside. And they came outside, and again, this whole thing happened maybe for 20 minutes, a half an hour, where there were different lights appearing above this lake across the street from where I live. And they're going like this, and have these lights like spinning around it, and they're disappearing. And then another one would come, and sometimes there'd be two at the most. There'd be like two or three in the sky at once. And but it's still incredible. And I'm thinking in my head, like, this is it. Like, this is gonna be all over the papers, and this is gonna be disclosure tomorrow. Like, this is it. It's happening right now. And that's why in that other experience I told you about, I wasn't expecting anything, because of this experience. Like, I thought this was it. I thought this was going to be like, I don't know, some like kind of disclosure or something like that. I thought like the whole world was going to know this was going on for some reason. That's how naive I was, I guess. So this went around for maybe 20, 25 minutes. And the way it ended was that there was these two of them, and they're coming at each other like this, and the lights are spinning around and everything, all these different color lights. And as soon as they were going to hit, like, I'm like thinking in my head, holy shit, they're going to crash.
Yeah.
And as soon as they like made contact and touched, it just disappeared.
Wow.
And then that was it. And it just ended. And, my mind was blown. That changed my life. Because that is the experience that all these events culminated to. And from then I started looking into contact, and that I eventually found Greer, and I eventually found the CE5 work. And the reason I was so impressed with Dr. Greer at the time was because when he was talking about contact and CE5, I'm like, what he's describing is exactly how contact happened for me. And you can't just read that in a book. You know what I mean? Like, the way he was explaining it was clearly he had experienced it. Like, you could tell he was coming from a place of knowing.
Yeah.
And then that's how I ended up finding CE5. And, when I found CE5, I actually brought CE5 to social networking.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because again, I'm a millennial, and there was no CE5 anywhere on Facebook. And I'm like, dude, let me just make a group. Well, first I made a community page, because either there were no group pages at that time, or I didn't know about them.
Yeah.
So I just created a community page called the CE5 Initiative. And, it was more based on Greer's work at that time, because I was new to all that. And then eventually either Facebook created groups, or I found out about them and I made a group page, and it blew up from there. And like, back then there was like 50 people on the group, or like then we got up to like 200, and all these were like pretty like serious diehard CE5 people. They had all been to like CSETI events and had working groups and were practicing. And I was networking with them, exchanging information. I met up with different people from all over the country and stuff. And we were also getting other people into the CE5 work and distributing information and that kind of thing. And
I follow you on Instagram. I saw, I was going to ask you about that. You worked, right, for like doing these kinds of events at a time? I don't know if it was work, but I saw you like kind of, from what I got from the pictures, like you have a picture with Stephen Greer, and you have a picture, it looks like you're like hosting a CE5 event or something.
Well, yeah, there was, I went to two events with Dr. Greer. One was in 2010, and that was a 3-day event. And the other one was 2011, and that was a full, like, what he calls the ambassador to the universe training. And that was a whole week-long event. And, fortunately back then the events were way cheaper. I went to the last like event that was like, I think at the time, like his week-long trainings were like $8.95 or something,
Mhm.
which I mean, it's a little expensive, but it's like, it's not like
It's not
what
like
it is
what
now.
it is now. Yeah, I know
Now
what
it's
you mean.
like that he moved it from like $900 to 2,500.
Yeah,
And when he moved it to 2,500, I protested with CSETI. I emailed them. I said, "This is outrageous." I said, "Nobody's going to come to the events. This is,
it's a lot
and
of
my
money.
whole thing, yeah, it's a lot of money. I mean,
Yeah,
normal people can't really afford that. I mean, I
no,
couldn't, I at the time, I was like, I don't know how young, but it was, most people could not just blow, 2,500 plus a plane ticket, plus a hotel, plus food, especially if you're trying to promote this work and mobilize people to do field work. So you
yeah,
want to get as many people doing this as you can. You're making it like an elitist thing. It's like
yeah,
it's going to kill it. And
yeah.
it actually eventually did come back in a way to backfire because of the way. I mean, you look at UFO Twitter now, and people's remarks are
Oh,
all like moneymaker Greer, and
yeah.
and and you know what? He did that to himself because
I know what
you
you
know
mean.
um, whether it's justified or not, I can't be the judge of that. But all the criticism he's facing is he brought on himself. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I get it, and that's actually like a real honest and a good a good take on it. I agree with you.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean he's making he's I mean he's from the events. If you do the math on the events, 2,500. It's at like $3,000 now, and like $3,000 or 3,500 with 25 people. That's like 75 grand for a
yeah,
week. Even if he took home like half that, damn, I would
yeah,
love to make 35 grand a week
yeah.
and do like 4 or 5 of those a year. I'd love to do that. But he did sacrifice his career. He was the director of emergency medicine at a hospital. So he was making 200, 300 G's
Yeah,
a year in his profession anyways.
yeah.
And he did leave all that behind. So,
I
it is what it is.
I know what you mean. It is what it is, but I also think like this is what like the red flag that came up for me like right away, right? Was because I forget what film it was in because I've seen all his films, obviously,
Yeah.
right? I've seen all his everyone's seen all his films, even the people that are hating on him. I've seen all his films.
Yeah.
Um, the last one I watched, I was like, oh my god,
Yeah.
I was like, dude, why am I watching this again? I watched it twice, I think, and I was like, what the hell? But
Yeah.
but I because I watched them all always throughout my whole life. So that's what I'm trying to say, like that I have looked up to him and I did look up to him at one point. But my issue was when he told the story about how he made contact and how he learned how to, use this protocol. And I was thinking, what if the phenomenon or these intelligent beings, these otherworldly beings, understood that you were charging people, what we just talked about a second ago, those kinds of numbers,
Yeah. I thought about
like,
that too. Yeah.
wouldn't they totally like, it doesn't make, for me, at first I was like, it just doesn't make sense because you'd think they'd want him to teach it to everyone, right? Like
Yeah.
if it really mattered to them, they would want him to teach it to everyone. And you would expect one of them to be like, hey, look, have you guys realized this guy's making a bunch of money off of what we taught him?
Yeah. And maybe
Don't worry.
miss
These are all thought experiments. We're just,
yeah, maybe I'm misplacing my perception, but I think that if they are as evolved as we can kind of assume,
yeah,
that they're not as judgmental as we are, and they see like the bigger picture of things, and they're
yeah.
like, if these people have the inkling to reach out to us, in a way we can respond. They probably want to interact in some way.
But honestly, the reason why I really enjoyed your content at first, or like when I first found you, right? Not at first, when I first found you was I was like, okay, awesome. I can learn about this and I don't have to go pay a bunch of money to go hang out with Stephen Greer and learn about this. There's people doing this and talking about it. And And then I started sitting down and going, we should be teaching everybody about this. We should all be just practicing or experimenting at least with it. Even if you don't believe in it and you are looking into the phenomenon, you need to at least experiment with it and give it a shot. You know what I mean? See what happens and practice it, because lots of us believe that the phenomenon has been here forever. Like I'm totally a believer in, like, the UFO phenomenon didn't start, 70 plus years ago. This has been happening forever. This is not like something like, oh, all of a sudden these flying saucers showed up. No, this is like what we talked about earlier when I was bringing up religion. That's why I always do that. Some people get a little like, oh no, he's talking about religion. And I'm like, I understand it because I, went to Catholic school and all this kind of stuff. But I feel like that understanding of the Catholic school upbringing and all that kind of stuff made me see it quicker than maybe someone else. Also because I was always just kind of like the kid that would raise his hand and be like, so Jesus is like Superman. And they were like, okay, go. They were like, so I already had this idea, like there's something right there. There's something going on in these texts that I'm reading. They're teaching me world religions. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute. These are all it's like different beings in each part of the planet influencing people, or maybe it's the same beings or whatever. And that's really what made me go like, okay, C5 could very well be possible. And seeing this kind of like, people are really coming after Greer right now, especially like with his last comments, that last video he dropped. And I don't agree with him in this idea that the phenomenon doesn't pose a threat, because I see it as phenomena. Like you asked this on one of the Ask UFO Twitter videos. Everyone should check that out. And if you're not subscribed to Engaging the Phenomenon's channel, please do that. He's awesome. I think it's multiple phenomena. Like, we're dealing with more than one type of being here, one type of species or one type of thing. It doesn't all align perfectly. Like, it doesn't, like the light beings. I know some people are like, well, that's just how you're seeing the gray, or how you're seeing, some people will say that. And I'm like, but the grays seem to have a way different interaction with people than when people tell me about their C5 experiences, or when they see light beings and that kind of stuff. And the orbs seem to interact differently than when somebody comes into contact with, I don't know, a flying saucer, right? It's just a different interaction. And if we're being visited, or if we're interacting with one type of species, I don't understand why it'd be far-fetched to think that we're being interacted with by an unlimited amount of different kind of beings. You know what I mean? It's, who knows what could really be going on. But what do you think? Like, what's your take on the phenomenon? Is it multiple phenomenon? Like, how does C5 play into like the negative encounters? You know what I'm talking about? Like,
sure. And from first of all, I think that we're dealing with a multitude of phenomena. I think that we're dealing with several different intelligences, and some of this is based on my experiences. So going back, I've had experiences with different kind of, it seems like they're different intelligences, not only visually, but you literally will get a different feeling, like a different vibe. If I can, if that makes any sense. And there's like a different feel to some of the different interactions. So, you couple that together, and it seems like there's probably different things. And to Greer's credit, he has said, but he doesn't say it often enough. He spoke more on it more recently, but and he talked about it back in the 90s, I think it's in some of his training materials, but it's not as emphasized as it should be, because he throws around the, all ETs visiting us are good. And he also does have a more nuanced approach than that. But I understand he's just trying to promote CE5 in a way where he doesn't want to spread fear, and he just wants people to go out with good intentions and have positive contact. And that's actually generally the case of what happens. Because when you're going out with the intention of the positive contact, that's usually what you attract. But in one presentation he did, he showed a graph and said, here you have like physical extraterrestrials, here you have like spiritual entities, angels, demons, like ghosts, astral beings and things of that nature. And his thing is basically when you're doing CE5, you're usually going to only attract these good entities, and you're not going to, because of the vibration you have or your intention, the consciousness, whatever you want to call it, you're not going to attract these negative entities. And I would say generally he's right, but he's kind of simplifying it.
Yeah.
And I think that there is all these different kind of entities. And, again, if you want to talk about the religion, I think, Dr. Diana Pasulka did a lot of great work on this. And, even Peter Levenda, in some of his books, he talked about it. Just about every religion you look at is based on interaction with non-human intelligence.
Yeah.
All these religions, just about, Buddhism, Vedanta, Christianity, Judaism, all of them, Islam, they're all of them somewhere mentioned, in Islam, they talk about jinns.
Yeah.
So there's all these religions, and they're all somehow, maybe it's not based on, that's the whole focus of it, but they're all talking about humans coming into contact with non-human intelligence, and that intelligence having some kind of impact on them in some way.
Yeah.
So there's a variety of ways you can look at it. And I think when you do go out with the contact and you're genuinely going out to have some kind of like a positive encounter, that's what you're going to usually have. Not that any other contact is impossible. So, that's but I I've spoken with thousands of different field workers, that people that go out to do CE5, and I know hundreds personally. I've been out with hundreds of different people personally to do CE5 work, and they've all been beneficial experiences or life enhancing, mind expanding. There were never any kind of negative encounters, although I do think that negative encounters sometimes happen. And, I don't think we can say, oh, all abductions are my labs. That's where I think Greer goes a little too far.
Yeah.
Because that, I understand what he's saying, that they're using psychotronics and they can induce like a psychic attack that would make you think it's a negative ET. But, I think that it is possible that, and there's a lot of ways you can even look at that, because somebody might interpret it as a horrifying experience just because it's another being and they're scared,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
even if they weren't, harmed in some way. But, then again, you have Jacques Vallée on Rogan talking about how somebody was injured. People were physically injured from UFO encounters. So, we don't have the answers. Some of them could be like military experiments, but, look at Travis Walton, right?
Yeah.
He had a UFO experience. It blasted him, he said, probably by accident. He thinks they took him on board to heal him.
Yeah.
But that it was, it was a mistake or accident, and he was harmed by a UFO allegedly. And I think his story is legit.
Yeah, I totally think Travis Walton's story as well is legit. It's definitely one of the cases I go to when I'm trying to explain to somebody how serious this phenomenon can be, right? Like how it can interact with you and these things can happen. And I always stick to this idea that, look, there's always chaos in reality, right? There's always the dark side. And I think that for us to believe that there are intelligent beings or entities interacting with us that are all good or all bad is completely just ridiculous. It's like you would never expect that. In like sometimes people get too. I've been having this feeling for some time. Like maybe it's happened in the last year.
sometimes people get too stuck up in or mixed into this, like breaking everything down piece by piece and understanding what everything really means, when it's super basic. It's like, of course there's bad and good things. If there's a bunch of beings interacting with us, there's going to be all kinds of things happening. And of course, like the other day we were talking about on Twitter, they were talking about the leaks that happened, or what George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell dropped, right, recently.
Yeah.
And people were like, we need radar data, we need HD footage, we need this. And I'm like, when has the government ever given you all those things? Like in any situation, right?
Yeah.
And I say the government, and I consider I mean, I'm a US citizen and I live in a foreign country, but one thing I learned leaving the US and coming here to Argentina was like, people are fighting over the same things here. Like they were throwing people out of helicopters and airplanes here back when I was eating cereal in LA growing up. And we have to like, we can't expect to have all the answers given to us. I think we're at a point in time where there, for some reason, which we will find out later, there's this new wave happening and people are like talking about this again. And the positive thing about it is the common everyday person might start to understand that this is a real phenomenon. So they might start to see the beauty in the universe. They might start to see the chaos a little bit too. But what do you feel about, like, what do you think about that? Like, I think there will be moments in time where we have to take what we can get. We have to keep searching, keep digging. There's nothing wrong with asking for more, but we also can't expect to have the answers sort of handed to us. At least the full story is not going to be given to us, I don't think, ever. What do you think about like disclosure and where disclosure could go?
Yeah, I think it's a whole process. I think it's since, if you want to just look at the 1940s, since then we've been having a steady disclosure, and it's had peaks, and highs and lows. We're going through a high now. I do think we're at a point of no return where we're going to continue to get greater confirmations, and things are going to just occur faster. We're going to get developments faster, just like technology is developing faster now. We're going to, the way that information goes nowadays with social media, social networking, I think that being tapped, we're going to see an incline in information, all information, including UFO information. But that's been going on before. In the 1940s, they were talking about flying saucers. But if you look, there's been different phases. Like there was, years ago, there was no, oh, the government's hiding this. There wasn't, that was a whole phase that happened, I think in the 70s or the 80s, what people said, more so after Donald Kehoe started talking and was kind of, he was an insider, he was coming from the military and saying they're not telling us everything. And after Blue Book closed, I think people were kind of like, what, that's it? And you had people like Hynek, still saying there's something to this and there's data out there, and this is not just explained away. So I think but there's wild cards now. Lou Elizondo.
Lou Elizondo. I love that you use that, wild cards. Totally, I agree.
Who could I was, I've been involved again since maybe 2009. I've been publicly engaging in this subject on social networking, and really involved with different people in the community. And I remember 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, it was like really slow. I was learning a ton of stuff. But then when, I could have never expected the A-tip story to drop. No, I was not expecting that. I don't think anybody saw that coming. Even, Rich Dolan, he did his book After Disclosure
Yeah.
in like 2012, I think the book came out or something. And he outlined possibilities of how disclosure could happen. One would be like a mass sighting or like an insider coming out, which is kind of Lou Elizondo, but I don't think anybody predicted what we saw, and I think we have more wild cards that are going to drop.
Yeah.
And I always bring up the idea that ultimately, the phenomenon is controlling disclosure.
Yes.
Because they could just at any point in time, within seconds, this entire planet would know that they're here.
Yeah.
Unquestionably, and that they're not humans, and it's not the military. Like point blank, they could do that at any time. I think that one of the reasons I like CE5, other than just it kind of like helps open people's minds and something that they have to experience for themselves, but it's also for a way for them to take part in disclosure other than just waiting for the government or anybody to hand you answers, or even an insider. You don't have to take their word for it. You can go out and have your own personal disclosure in a sense.
Yeah. That's totally why I looked into C5 in the first place, and I wasn't afraid to experiment with it and try it, because I was like, look, I believe in this, and sooner or later, whatever happens is going to happen, but at least I need to take the chance and see if I can pull this off. And if this is really going on, I need to know how to do it. And what you were saying about the phenomenon is the one that controls disclosure. I say that too. And I think people don't think about that. They don't think about, like, it kind of tripped me out the first time I really had that realization. I sat back and I thought about it for a minute, and I said, wait a minute. What does that really mean? Like, about the phenomenon? Like, what does that mean about its interaction with us? Like, what's going on here? Because the more I look into this topic and the more I think about it, the harder it gets for me to understand what the phenomenon is really doing, right? Like, I understand the positive encounters, kind of, and I get when people explain the interactions they had with the phenomenon and how they felt and what they experienced. But then I think on like a grander scale, right? Because there's so many negative things that happen on our planet, and our species is so, like, I think with COVID and everything that we saw in the last year, it's a good example that we aren't as evolved as we think we are. We don't pay attention to the right things. People, it's almost like, definitely the last year was a good example that I was almost going to say, like, we aren't ready for full disclosure either way. You know what I mean? Yeah. If we can't think about being invaded by a virus or that kind of situation, how could we ever explain to the masses what's going on with the phenomenon? Like, so I think, that being said, disclosure, the way we get it, like you said too, we're on the exact same page with this. Like, caught everyone off guard. They shouldn't be expecting disclosure to be handed to them or to be what they want. Disclosure is going to be what you get, and that's it, until it gets to the point where, well, who knows if me and you will ever live to that point, but I think we will. I think we will live to that point.
I hope so.
Yeah. I think we will.
I hope so.
Yeah. That's me too. That's what I'm trying to say too. Like, I think so. I hope so too. I'm not really into the whole bad alien theory, the whole negative alien theory. Like, the other day I tweeted something, and it was, I was just thinking, and I said, look, if they can abduct you whenever they want from wherever they want, like walk through the wall and make you feel like you're happy even though you're scared, right? Like, calm you down and just make you forget about it and all this kind of stuff, then they don't need to invade the planet. That whole idea of invasion and aliens coming and blasting people, they could just, like, pick everyone little by little, day by day, just swoop you up and do whatever they want, put you back. So this idea of an invasion is just, it's movies. It's all
Yeah.
So, and who knows if they haven't been here this whole time and we are like the visitors. We are like the people that
Yeah.
are, the land dwellers. The,
Yeah.
but yeah, uh, I was going to ask you something else. I saw on Instagram that you are going to start a podcast. That sounds pretty cool. Are you going to do, like, is it going to be different content than what's on your channel? Are you going to, like, what's your idea for it? Have you thought about it yet? Or is it just something that's in the works?
Yeah, I'm gonna have formal interviews, and I'll do panels, and I'm gonna bring different people to the UFO conversation who aren't necessarily associated with the UFO
Great idea.
community. So, I mean, my first guest that's gonna be really on the podcast. That's gonna be, right from the start, you're gonna see like, wow, like who, I'm bringing different people to the conversation. But I also definitely want to have people like you on the podcast, and people like John Majorowski from UFOs on the Level, Project Unity, other different people, from the UFO Twitterverse, but other people from different fields too.
I love
You
that.
know,
That's brilliant, dude. That's definitely what we need. We need people from other fields. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but like I just hope with my content and the channel and just me in general, like we can share that message and get more people to accept this topic and understand it and come and talk about it, because it's not all reptilians and David Icke. You know what I mean? It's yeah. I mean,
or Greer.
or Greer, yeah, or Greer. But we need that. So I think that's a great idea, dude, for the podcast. And I can't wait to see what you do
I
with
think
that.
I think it's a natural progression. I just see that's where it's going to go from here. And just with, look at social media.
Yeah.
There's even people that, interact with UFO Twitter on kind of like just a random basis that aren't necessarily UFO Twitter people.
Yeah.
You got that Gabby from the Peacock Network. He's hitting on disclosure now. He's a mainstream news guy.
Yeah.
And he's semi involved in UFO Twitter now. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just going to expand from there. So, I think if people like us can, kind of let people know it's okay to talk about this even from time to time, and have them speak to people in their network here or there, or just have them open to the subject, is a great way to go.
Yeah. Do you have the same situation happen now that I'm like always on UFO Twitter and I'm always talking to you guys and we're all interacting? I'm like dropping news to my friends and family like days before it happens, and they're starting to go like, wait a minute, you were already talking about this on your Instagram feed or on, or you told me about it when we talked on the phone the other day, and it was just on Fox. It was just on, they'll send me stuff like, look, you were right, what you were talking about. And I'm like, yeah, I think that's why we're also seeing attention in those areas. Like if somebody from the news is paying attention to us, it's because they want to get that leak first before the other guy gets it.
Yeah.
But I think it's good. I agree. And I think that's what I've always wanted too. It's like, apart from having a community and meeting awesome people like you and just being able to have these conversations and be like, wow, like I feel super normal having a conversation with you about this, because I should feel normal having a conversation about this.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find in out in the world sometimes. So this is like priceless for me, these kinds of interactions. And I was like, I have to try my best to normalize this topic in all aspects, and if that means just showing the world that I'm a normal person and we're all normal people, and they shouldn't be afraid about talking about the subject or their close encounters or what they want to, they shouldn't be afraid to ask questions, because we're here for that. Like we spend so much time looking into this, that what else would we be good for? Like that's, we're all searching for the truth. Why not? So
Yeah.
I love that you're going to do that. I can't wait to see what comes from that, man.
Well, it's gonna be cool to hear some of their perspectives too.
Yeah.
For one, and I think for me, part of why I had some of my experiences was to be involved in this kind of way.
Yeah. I have to say it does feel a little like a path. It does feel like a little bit like a path. Like I'm not that kind of person that will say that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the older I get and realizing like where I am and what I'm doing, like sometimes I'll wake up and I'll be like, wait, I can't believe like I have a channel and I'm talking about this and I'm meeting all these awesome people, and like I'll fall asleep and I'll wake up and I'll be like, wait a minute, wow, I can't believe that the kid that was surfing, the teenager surfing and skateboarding, never thinking this would happen or I would ever talk about this kind of stuff, even though it was always there, that now I'm doing it and I'm like, wow, this has to be some kind of path, because it just can't be for no reason. Like, so yeah, I agree. And I got to say, I'm a little envious of your close encounters. I need to start doing C5. I'm gonna have to ask you for tips more often.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, and like I said, initially I didn't initiate the initial encounters. They happened to me.
Yeah.
There's, I wish I could say I know the reason and all that. I have some suspicions and some ideas. I don't know for sure. But I mean, they'll mess you up a little sometimes. They could be traumatic. It's not all fun and games.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I believe it's a positive transformation, at least in my experience. But yes, you can definitely have, again, even some of the simpler experiences with CE5 are transformative, because you're engaging, you're
engaging the
initiating
phenomenon.
I like to call it like an invitation. Yeah, engaging the phenomenon. Exactly. Yeah. You're engaging with the phenomenon directly.
Yeah.
There's no kind of, you're not reading something in a book. Like it's a firsthand experience, and when you have an actual experience with something, you garner insight. And from that point, you never see everything the same again. It's just, you have a new way of looking at things.
I agree. And that's a great way to say it, definitely. And seeing as you are engaging the phenomenon, and everyone, please go subscribe to Engaging the Phenomenon. James, I want to thank you so much for coming on the channel. It really means a lot. And you are the first guest forever. You will always remain the first guest. And I want to bring you back. So whenever you want to talk, we already talk on the side. So whenever you want to come back, just let me know. And I'll be happy to bring you back.
Yeah, definitely, man. I'm hoping to have you on the channel very soon too on Engaging Phenomenon, and I definitely want to have you on the podcast as well, man. I love your channel.
Thank you, man. Thank you guys for tuning in. Like I said, don't forget to go subscribe to James, and yeah, we'll talk soon, guys.
See you next time.